The rain had been falling since dawn, thick, steady, and cold. The kind of rain that seeps through every layer of clothing, finds its way into shoes, and makes even the strongest spirits feel small. Willow Creek wasn't a big city, but it had its share of people who'd stopped looking anyone in the eye. Everyone was in a hurry, chasing their own storms. Walter sat on a worn wooden bench near the edge of the park, just beneath a flickering street lamp that hummed with tired electricity. His coat, once dark gray, had faded to a dull brown. The threads on his sleeves had come undone years ago. His shoes were mismatched, one black, one brown, both too big, both leaking. His cardboard sign rested on his knees, just hungry, not hopeless. The ink had run from the rain, but the message was still clear enough. Walter had been in that park for almost 2 weeks. He didn't beg, didn't speak much, and didn't bother to approach people. He'd learned that when you start asking, people start looking away faster. He used to have a house, a job, a wife named Ruth who laughed like spring sunshine. But cancer had taken her in less than a year, and grief had taken everything else. He couldn't bring himself to return to work, couldn't keep up with the bills, couldn't bear the silence of the home they once shared. Now he lived day to day, some nights in a shelter, some nights under that very street lamp. The park had become his place of quiet surrender. That morning, across town, Emily Carter was running late. She had spent the entire night preparing for her big job interview at a downtown marketing firm. Her alarm had gone off at 6 a.m., but nerves had kept her up most of the night. By the time she left her tiny apartment, the rain had already started, soaking through her flats before she reached the corner bus stop. Emily was 27, ambitious, and tired of hearing, "Maybe next time." She'd graduated with honors but had been working part-time as a barista ever since. Every rejection letter had chipped away at her confidence a little more. Still, she had promised herself that today would be different. She had her portfolio neatly wrapped in a plastic folder, her resume freshly printed, and her heart set on making an impression. The quickest route downtown went through Willow Creek Park. She hated walking through it in the rain, the muddy paths, the puddles, the lonely benches. But she had no choice. The bus was delayed again. She held her umbrella low, shoulders hunched, as the wind tugged at her coat. As she neared the park's center, she noticed a shape under the street lamp, someone sitting motionless in the rain. When she got closer, she saw the sign. Just hungry, not hopeless. For a moment, she slowed her pace. She saw the old man's trembling hands wrapped around the damp cardboard. His hair, once thick, was now a patchwork of gray and white. Raindrops rolled down his face like silent tears, but he didn't wipe them away. Emily's heart squeezed. Something about him felt familiar. Not his face, but his presence. He reminded her of her grandfather, who had always told her, "Never judge someone by where you find them, you don't know what they've lost." Still, she hesitated. She had only 20 minutes to get to her interview. If she stopped now, she might miss her bus, or worse, show up late and ruin her only chance. She bit her lip, shifted her weight, and told herself she'd help him later, maybe on her way back. She started to walk past. But then Walter spoke. His voice was quiet, hoarse, but carried something that cut through the rain. "Miss," he said, looking up, his eyes startlingly clear despite everything else about him. "You dropped something." Emily froze and looked down. Sure enough, her portfolio, the one with her resume, her designs, her dream job, was half submerged in a puddle behind her. Her heart sank. She darted back, scooped it up, and tried to shake off the water. The pages were damp, the ink bleeding slightly. "Oh no," she whispered, panicking. Walter, still sitting there, looked up at her with a faint, knowing smile. "The rain gets to everyone eventually," he said. "Sometimes all you can do is dry off and start again." Something in his tone, calm, accepting, almost fatherly, steadied her for a moment. She knelt down beside him, her hair sticking to her face, and for the first time looked him in the eyes. They were tired eyes, yes, but kind ones. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't even see it fall." "Most people don't see much these days," he replied. "Always running somewhere, forgetting there's good to notice, even in the rain." Emily didn't know what to say. She stood there, holding her ruined portfolio, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to offer him something, food, money, anything, but she hadn't brought her purse. She had only a $5 bill folded in her pocket for bus fare. Still, as she looked at him, the thought of walking away again felt unbearable. "Have you eaten today?" she asked. Walter smiled faintly. Yesterday's coffee was strong enough to count as breakfast. Without thinking, Emily reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the $5 bill, and held it out. "Please," she said, "get yourself something warm." Walter looked at the bill, then at her face. "Are you sure, miss? That looks like bus money to me." Emily nodded. "I'll walk. I could use the fresh air anyway." He accepted it slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice catching. "Not just for this, for seeing me." She smiled through the rain. "You reminded me to stop and look." As she turned to leave, Walter called after her, "Good luck, wherever you're headed. You're going to do just fine." Emily's throat tightened again. She wanted to believe him. She didn't know how he could sound so certain, but something about his words gave her a strange new calm. She walked the rest of the way to the interview, soaked to the skin but lighter somehow, as if part of her burden had been lifted by that encounter. She didn't realize it yet, but that small exchange, a dropped portfolio, a kind word, and a $5 bill, would set off a chain of events that neither of them could have imagined. Because kindness, when given freely, has a way of echoing back, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. And in the forgotten corner of Willow Creek Park, under that flickering streetlight, Walter sat a little taller, clutching not the money, but the feeling that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't as lost as he'd thought. He looked up at the gray sky and whispered to himself, maybe today's not so bad after all. The interview hadn't started well. Emily arrived 15 minutes late, her clothes damp and her hair clinging stubbornly to her cheeks. The receptionist's polite but tight-lipped smile didn't help her nerves either. She apologized, clutching her half-dried portfolio like a lifeline. Inside the conference room sat 3 interviewers, all in sharp suits, their expressions unreadable. Emily's heart pounded as she took her seat. She could almost hear the rain outside echoing her own unease. "Miss Carter," the woman in the center began, "you seem flustered." Emily swallowed. I had a bit of an unexpected delay." The man to her right raised an eyebrow. "Would you like a moment to collect yourself?" She thought about lying, about saying the bus broke down or her alarm didn't go off. But then she remembered Walter, the way he had looked at her, the simple honesty in his words. So she told the truth. "There was an elderly man sitting in the rain," she said quietly. "He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. I stopped to check on him. I couldn't just walk past." The room went still. For a moment, she worried she'd made a mistake. But then the woman at the center leaned back in her chair and gave a faint smile. "Go on." Emily explained everything, how she'd dropped her portfolio, how the man had noticed and helped her, how she'd given him her bus money and walked the rest of the way. She didn't dramatize it, she just told it as it was, one human moment in a world that didn't have enough of them. When she finished, there was a pause. Finally, the older man on the right nodded slowly. "You know, we've interviewed 15 people this week," he said. "And you're the first one to make me believe that your work could actually connect with people." The woman smiled. "We need someone who understands empathy as much as creativity. I think we've found her." Emily blinked. "Wait, are you saying?" "Congratulations," the woman said. "You're hired." For a second, Emily couldn't speak. She sat frozen, unsure if she'd heard right. When she finally exhaled, it came out as a laugh, half disbelief, half relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "You won't regret it." As she left the building an hour later, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, the kind of freshness that comes after a storm. She stood on the sidewalk, smiling to herself. She wanted to run back to the park and tell Walter, to thank him again. But when she reached the bench, he was gone. Only his soggy cardboard sign remained, the words almost washed away. She picked it up and folded it carefully, tucking it into her bag. "Not hopeless," she murmured. "Never hopeless. Days turned into weeks. Emily started her new job, and she thrived. Her campaign ideas, centered around real people, small kindnesses, genuine human emotion, caught attention fast. Her team loved her approach. Clients responded to her sincerity. But she never forgot the old man who had unknowingly helped her find her footing again. Every morning, she passed through Willow Creek Park on her way to work, hoping she might see him sitting on that bench again. He never was. Sometimes she'd leave a coffee and sandwich there anyway, just in case. One chilly afternoon, about a month later, Emily's company announced a new project, a citywide campaign to highlight community kindness. They called it the ripple effect. Emily was chosen to lead it. The idea was simple. Find and share stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary good, everyday heroes who reminded the world that compassion still mattered. She loved the concept immediately. And without hesitation, she knew where to begin. That weekend, Emily went back to the park with a small camera and notebook. She asked around about the old man, showing photos of the bench, describing him to anyone who'd listen. Most people just shrugged. A few said they'd seen him months ago, sitting quietly and feeding pigeons. But one woman at a nearby coffee stand paused thoughtfully. The old man with the sign. She said, "Yeah, I know him. Name's Walter. Used to come by every morning for black coffee. Kind soul. Haven't seen him lately, though." Emily's heart sank. "Do you know where he might have gone?" The woman shook her head. "No idea, but you know what? The day he stopped showing up, a younger guy came by and said Walter had helped him once too. Apparently, Walter saved his dog from being hit by a car last winter. Said he owed the man his life." Emily smiled softly. "That sounds like him." She spent the next few weeks gathering stories just like that, small acts that added up to something bigger. Neighbors helping strangers, kids raising money for shelters, shop owners giving free meals. And though Walter was nowhere to be found, his influence seemed to linger in every act she uncovered. When the campaign finally launched, it was a huge success. Billboards went up all over the city, showing everyday people performing simple acts of goodness, helping someone cross the street, leaving food for the hungry, comforting a crying stranger. Each poster bore the same tagline, "One act can change everything." It went viral online. News outlets picked it up. Donations to local shelters doubled within a week. The mayor even mentioned it in a press conference, saying the city hadn't seen such a collective spirit in years. And then, one morning, a letter arrived at Emily's office. It was handwritten on a piece of old stationery, the handwriting shaky but familiar. "Greater than dear Miss Carter. I saw your campaign today, the ripple effect. Made me smile. Didn't realize a small moment in the rain could reach so far. I'm doing better now. Found a place at the shelter downtown, and a few kind souls helped me get back on my feet. Turns out, people really do care. You reminded me of that. Thank you for not walking past me that morning. You gave me more than money, you gave me faith again. Your friend, Walter." Emily read the letter 3 times before she could see it clearly through her tears. She pressed the paper to her heart and whispered, "I found you, Walter." That afternoon, she went to the downtown shelter. And there he was, standing in the courtyard, sweeping fallen leaves with an old broom. His hair was shorter, his clothes clean. When he saw her, his face lit up. "I was hoping I'd get to thank you properly," he said, setting the broom aside. She laughed through her tears. "You already did. You changed my life, Walter." He shook his head gently. "No, Emily, you changed mine." They sat together on a bench, talking for hours. She told him about the job, the campaign, how his story had inspired thousands. He told her about the shelter, the people he'd met, the hope he'd found again. Before they parted, Emily handed him something, a small card with the campaign's motto printed on it. "Keep this," she said. "You're the reason it exists." Walter looked down at the words, "One act can change everything." He smiled, eyes misty. "Guess it really can." That evening, as Emily walked home, she looked around the park. The same park where it had all started, the rain, the sign, the stranger who wasn't hopeless after all. The world hadn't changed overnight, but she could feel something different in the air, lighter, warmer, like the city itself had taken a breath of kindness and decided to hold on to it. And in that small forgotten corner, faith in humanity had quietly been restored, not by speeches or headlines, but by 2 people who stopped, saw each other, and chose kindness when it mattered most.